When Aaron and I drove this car home from Oregon, the first few months following were spent fixing a few things which kept the car from reliably starting and shifting gears down the road. The rest of that first year, I just kind of bounced from one thing to another, mostly focusing on things I felt were important. This year, I intend to be a bit more methodical about my approach to efforts on the car, so I've come up with a little list. Now, keeping in mind that I don't actually have a budget for this car, but occasionally I can spend some unexpected money, I've split the list into two categories: things which require little to no additional expenditure, and those which do. This is a relative concept, but for me, little to no money is roughly 20 bucks. These are the things I can do whenever I have time to give, while the rest of them will require some level of planning. Now, if you've been watching, you'll know I've already completed the fuel sending unit, and it was a success. I already have the parts to repair my seat spring and seat back position cam. I also already have the rebuild kit for the carburetors. Each year we celebrate Christmas at my house, and nearly exactly a month later my birthday. My wife and mother are gracious enough to simply let me spend some money as I'd like. So in 2021, I put a vast majority of those eggs into the door Sills basket. Then I waited months and months to receive the final bit of that kit, being the outside scrapers. Ultimately, J-Bugs did right by me and refunded me the entire purchase price of the outside scrapers, even though I purchased them as part of a discounted kit. So I could just go purchase them elsewhere, since their supplier apparently was just not getting the scrapers to them. Now, another important thing I need to do is replace my oil filler boot. So we're just going to put that above the carburetor's rebuild. And I'd also really like to clean and paint the pedal assembly. Now, I don't know for sure that this is actually an issue, but I feel like there might be able to be some improvement made to the effective range of my brake pedal. So I'm going to look at that while I have the pedal assembly out. Which brings me to another thing that I really want to do, which is to restore the push button assembly. And sort of hand in glove with that is to restore the windshield washer functionality. I've already done a little bit of looking at the components that I have for my windshield washer, and I don't think it's going to take too much. The really good part is that I do know that my washer fluid reservoir can be pressurized. I'd also really like to restore the side markers in the fenders. As it turns out, the fenders that came on the car don't have the cutouts for them. And I have yet to do the research to learn whether they're actually not supposed to be there for certain models in certain countries. Honestly, I just don't care. That's what I want, and so I'm going to put them in. And while initially I would really love to have those marker lights function as they were originally designed, ultimately I know that I probably will just wind up wiring them up to act like turn signals. But that brings us to another point. My turn signal cancellation is unreliable. I've had the steering column apart a number of times, and sometimes when I put it back together, one works and the other one doesn't. Sometimes both of them don't work. Sometimes it's the other one that works. There's something that I'm still missing there, and so I need to dig into that a little bit better and make sure that whenever I put that thing back together, I can trust that the turn signal cancellation is going to function as it should. That's about it for the little to no extra cost. Extra cost, depending on how many I get, I guess it could be 20 bucks or less, but I just don't know for sure. So we're going to put getting extra keys here. I only have one set of keys to the car. I have already documented the numbers on the tumblers. So I should just be able to reach out to, and I forget who it is, but a guy on the Samba who cuts keys by numbers, and just order some keys. Helps if I can spell. Now, I don't know for sure that my fuel tank does need reconditioning. I don't believe that I'm getting any rust in the fuel system, but the fuel filters kind of get clogged up. I don't know, maybe a little quicker than I think they should. And I just feel like, for a daily driver, why would I not want to make sure that it's as good as it can be? So I love the idea of doing that. For the most part, the car drives pretty darned well, but I do definitely need to replace the lower ball joints. And I've already begun the process. If you've been watching, you know that I already have 2 additional wide 5 wheels, which are the correct smoothie wide 5 wheels for the Type 3, and I already had 2. So those 2 I have already begun to sandblast and get prepared for paint. So I'd like to get paint on those wheels, put the rubber on them, then take those wheels that rubber came off of, sandblast them and paint them. You get the idea. Now, for the driver, to a large degree, no big deal. I can drive down the road. I've got one good working wiper. Hey, who needs 2 wipers? Well, I'd like to have the passenger side wiper or the right-hand side wiper for those of you who, don't want to accept the idea that driver side is left side. It's different. Now here's one that honestly I've just kind of been really taking my time because it's not something that I already have experience with. And so I'm really stepping into it gingerly, as I tend to do with anything that I don't already have experience with. And that's body panel repair. I've got, as you probably know, a lot of body panel repair that needs to be done. So I have that on the list. I want to make sure I get some of that done. I do have a hammer and dolly, but there's going to be other things I'm going to need to be able to do a reasonable job. I certainly need some sort of stand. There could be a lot that goes into that, so we'll just put it on the list for now. Now, the transmission nose cone, I'm almost 100% certain that the only reason I'm losing gear oil is because of maybe the nose cone needing a new gasket. I'm hoping it's not any worse than that, but in order to figure out if it's worse than that or just to do it, I've got to pull the transmission, which means pulling the engine, and of course it's a swing axle, so it's, not a huge job, but it's a bigger job than it would be if it were an IRS. Okay, so we've got another hand in glove one here. While I know that it is not correct for this year, this is a daily driver, and again, if you followed any of my other videos, you might have already kind of picked up on the idea that to a large degree, I want the car to look original. I'm not terribly concerned that everything is completely perfect, period, correct for the year. In fact, there may be a couple of places where I'm going to be okay making some changes where it's not even a Type 3 part, and we'll get into that at another time. But in this case, I really would like to install some reverse lights on here. I forget if those came in at maybe 66 or 67. It's a place on the transmission where you install a switch and there's some wiring that comes off the coil. Pretty straightforward deal. However, if my transmission does not have that place built in, it will require either some sort of modification or a whole different housing. I'm not even sure yet, so that'll take some looking into. Now the car does already have sun visors, and if it were a newer car, they would even work correctly. But after I purchased replacement clips for them, I learned that they're not actually quite correct. So I do need at least the correct year sun visors to work. Now the steering horn ring I was able to replace recently after my trip to Way Out Salvage. Yay, go Way Out Salvage. And while they're not installed yet, I do also have some replacement door sills that are in some pretty good condition. I'll just need to get some clips for that. For the uninitiated, At least most of the non-bus air-cooled VWs have a hole in the center of the nose of the car, which allows you to remove the shift shaft. My car came with no front apron plugs, so we'll put that on the list too. One of the videos that I just sort of internally refer to as everyday videos did a whole lot better than some of the others, left me stranded in the middle of the road. And again, for those of you who watched it, you might remember that the whole reason is because this aftermarket fuse box that allows you to use modern blade style fuses, ooh, isn't that exciting, is a piece of crap. So I would love to go back to the original, which will probably work for many, many years to come. Hopefully no latent anger about that situation came through in the recording of this. Neither of my window winders is very good. At least one of them actually has the handle that you can grab hold of to spin it. The other one just has a shaft where that should go. Ultimately, I'd love to have a really nice pair of window winders. Realistically, I just would like to have two, highly functional window winders. While installing my dual tone horn system, I got a better look at my front bumper and kind of realized that there are a few things either missing or incorrect on there. I grabbed a bolt out of my drawer that worked for one of those places. And while there might be more than just a bolt that I need, we'll just mark this down as a bolt. Now, it really wasn't that long ago that I made this list, but it's kind of exciting now that I'm going back and finally putting this all into a video to run into yet another item on the list that I've already taken care of. And that is my seat back with the armrest. So the Notchback S model was supposed to have the rear seat back with an armrest, but mine didn't come with one. And I was able to obtain one out of the fastback at the Way Out Salvage Yard. And the last item I've put on the list is to restore heater functionality. While my wife has been great about driving with me in the car in various different weather conditions, I really would like to have functioning heat. And yeah, my rockers are just trashed. And so, delivery of that heat is going to be interesting at best. It's really not entirely necessary, but there's just this part of me that says, man, it would be so cool to have that restored. So I would like to do that.
But hang on just a minute, because yesterday I was reminded of one more thing to add to the list when I decided that I would do somebody a favor and took a little trip in the pouring rain. And not only do we have that disgusting towel out there, but we've got this scene in here, and this looks a lot better because I've already done a lot of the work. But the floors just turn into a swamp. And then I got to get back here and mop up the well underneath the rear seat and pull the battery out and all this anytime I drive the car. And that comes in from underneath. And it also comes in from my fresh air boxes.
I've got a pretty big list of things here. I'm certain, especially since it is already March, that I will not get all of these things done this year. But here I've got this nice big list, and I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Which things would you really like to, make sure you see me do this year? Which things do you think are stupid? I don't care. Tell me what you think about any of it. Anyway, that's the list, and we'll see what we get done this year.